Can you believe that right in the heart of a capital city glowing with neon lights, trendy cafes, and towering glass skyscrapers, there exists a parallel world, one so invisible that official maps pretend it doesn't exist? Phnom Penh, the beating heart of Cambodia, often appears to visitors as a city on the rise, a place eager to join the global stage. Yet, just a few kilometers from its glittering center, you step into another reality. A squalid slum where women and children do not simply live, they fight to survive, day after day. Here, paved roads vanish into muddy alleys. Houses are not built but patched together from rusted tin, scraps of wood, and torn plastic sheets, trembling each time the rain falls. There are no bright city lights, only the smoke of charcoal fires and the stench of stagnant canals seeping through every crack. Phnom Penh has two faces, one polished, one hidden. And it is in this contrast that a haunting question emerges. Is the city we see truly the whole truth? In this documentary, fascinating discoveries will take you across that fragile boundary, inside Cambodia's most squalid slum, to reveal what life is really like in Phnom Penh's forgotten neighborhoods. Why does a community, only a stone's throw away from modern boulevards, remain trapped in filth, danger, and poverty? Why must women bear the weight of entire households while their children grow up learning the language of survival on the streets rather than lessons in a classroom? This is not just Cambodia's story. It is a mirror reflecting the harsh reality of urban poverty spreading across Southeast Asia and beyond. Prepare yourself for a journey that is not comfortable, but necessary. Because sometimes, to truly understand a city, we must dare to walk into the shadows where light rarely reaches. Number 1. Living space. Have you ever imagined that just a few steps away from glittering skyscrapers lies another labyrinth, not built of stone or steel, but woven from mud, garbage, and the damp breath of a forgotten city? This is Bayong Trobe, Phnom Penh's most squalid slum. As you step inside, the suffocating narrowness is undeniable. Homes cobbled together from splintered wood, rusted sheets of tin stained by decades of rain, and torn plastic stretched across frames to block the wind. The walls are so thin that a neighbor's cough echoes through like a reminder of fragility. Yet life persists. Children play barefoot in pools of wastewater, their souls pressed against shards of glass and half-rotten trash. Above, tangled lines of drying laundry sway like flags of an unrecognized world. A boy, no older than 8, dashes across a shaky wooden plank, each step a gamble with fate. And all of this unfolds just a short distance away from chic cafes and sparkling shopping malls. It is the cruel paradox of urban growth. Neon lights on one side, damp shadows on the other, separated by nothing more than a few city blocks. But what does this really mean? It reveals that development never spreads evenly. It always leaves behind pockets of darkness where people cling to survival with whatever scraps remain. Life here is a lesson. Humans can craft shelters from discarded materials, but what they truly need is not just a roof, but a rightful place in society. And as we walk away from this scene, a quiet question lingers. Will Phnom Penh be remembered for its towers rising proudly into the sky, or for the rusted tin roofs sagging above waters black with decay? Number 2. History of formation. Did you know that the muddy alleys of Phnom Penh today trace their roots back to one of the darkest chapters of history nearly half a century ago? In 1975, when the Khmer Rouge seized control, the capital was emptied in just 3 days. Every resident was forced to march into the countryside, abandoning their homes, possessions, and most importantly, their legal rights to land. When the regime collapsed in 1979, survivors returned only to find ruins and their ownership erased as if it had never existed. With no documents, no titles, they built makeshift shelters along rivers, canals, and forgotten public land. This was the beginning of Phnom Penh's slums. Through the 1980s and 1990s, as Cambodia struggled with droughts, crop failures, and agricultural instability, waves of rural migrants continued to pour into the city. Families from provinces like Prey Veng, Kampong Cham, or Svai Rieng arrived with fragile hopes of opportunity, only to end up building rusty tin shacks by polluted canals. These were not just shelters, but monuments of broken promises and systemic neglect. The slums of Phnom Penh are not accidents of poverty. They are the living legacy of policy and history, born from the collapse of land rights and the city's inability to absorb massive migration. When we look at these patchwork homes of splintered wood and torn plastic, we are not only seeing poverty, we are witnessing the collective memory of a people once erased from their own capital. And within these fragile shelters lies the hidden prologue of modern Phnom Penh, a city that rises skyward while carrying scars that run deep into the ground beneath it. Number 3. Women as the pillars. Can you imagine that in a place where poverty and insecurity form invisible walls, it is women who become the only pillars holding entire families together? In Bayong Trobe, more than 60% of households survive because of women's labor. They are not only mothers and wives, but also workers, protectors, and the fragile beams that support the community. In the morning, you see them at rickety sugarcane carts, their calloused hands turning the creaking wheel, the grinding sound echoing like the heartbeat of the slum. By midday, some stoop low, collecting cans and plastic bottles, exchanging scraps of trash for scraps of hope. By night, many return from garment factories on the city's edges, exhausted after 12-hour shifts, carrying just enough to keep the family afloat. And within these stories stands Danny, a single mother in her early 30s. 4 years ago, her husband left, abandoning her with 2 young children. Refusing defeat, she transformed a small cart into her family's lifeline, selling sugarcane juice to neighborhood kids. For her, each cup is not only income, but a promise that her children will continue school, even if the road to class is flooded with mud. These women stand like makeshift wooden pillars, fragile yet defiant, holding up roofs that should have collapsed long ago. They are proof of a brutal truth. In poverty, women do not merely survive, they recreate life itself. And as you walk through these alleys, meeting their weary yet determined eyes, one question lingers. Can a city truly progress if its future still rests precariously on the worn shoulders of forgotten women? Let us pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and place ourselves in the shoes of those who live here. After the first 3 discoveries, we have witnessed fragile shelters, haunting echoes of history, and the unshakable strength of women carrying entire households. Now imagine this. If you only had $5 a day, would you choose food for your family or books for your child? It is no longer a simple choice, but a bitter test of survival versus hope. When we watch a mother's frail hands counting small coins, we do not merely see poverty. We see crossroads where destiny is reshaped by the weight of hunger. When a child's eyes light up holding a torn notebook, we realize that hope can still grow even in the harshest soil. And then a deeper thought rises. Poverty in Phnom Penh may look unique, but it forces the same universal questions humanity has always wrestled with. Who are we? When survival demands we sacrifice the future. We build cities, we create, we conquer nature. But what will we leave behind? If even the right to live and the right to learn remain luxuries for millions, picture a single candle flickering in a dark hut, its fragile glow reflecting the fragile hope of those clinging to life. This is the moment when the narration slows, like a long, steady breath, not just to hear the story, but to truly feel it. Number 4, health risks. Have you ever considered that rain, the very thing meant to cleanse and refresh, could turn into a nightmare? In Bayong Trobe, when dark clouds gather, the rain does not fall as pure water. It mixes with overflowing drains and garbage, transforming alleys into foul rivers. Residents call it the season of sickness. With no sewage system, no underground pipes, each heavy rainfall drowns courtyards in filth and traps homes like islands surrounded by contaminated floods. Children, curious and restless, wade through the murky pools with bare feet. From those innocent games, they carry home swollen cuts, festering sores, and fevers that arrive unannounced. Adults cough through the night, wheeze for air, or double over with stomach pains from drinking tainted water. For them, hospitals are distant luxuries. Medicine often comes too late. Here, health is not defined inside clinics. It is dictated by the air they breathe, the water they drink, and whether the ground beneath their homes stays dry or drowns in refuse. The story of an 8-year-old boy whose foot became infected simply by running across the floodwater stands as a warning without words. In this place, every raindrop can be an invisible blade. And the painful irony is that while Phnom Penh raises more towers into the sky, at its base, people still live in an environment where illness flows as easily as the water in the streets. Witnessing this, one question lingers. Is health merely the outcome of medicine? Or is it the mirror of the environment we force humanity to endure? Number 5, stolen education. Can you imagine a city where children do not carry school books, but instead carry sacks on their backs? In Bayong Trobe, fewer than 30% of children over the age of 10 remain in school. Most are pulled out not because they dislike learning, but because poverty has stolen their chance. Behind the facade of free education lies a heavy burden of hidden costs: a pair of shoes, a school uniform, a new notebook, all beyond reach for families earning less than $5 a day. When parents must choose between dinner tonight or tuition for tomorrow, survival always comes first. Picture a little girl, just in grade 3, her eyes still sparkling with the joy of letters, forced to leave her classroom behind. From that day forward, she walks beside her mother into a sprawling landfill, her tiny hands sifting through cans and bottles, trading recyclables for scraps of money. Mountains of waste soon replace blackboards and chalk. The clinking of metal scraps becomes her daily lesson, and the acrid smoke of burning plastic her unwanted textbook. Her story is not an exception, but a familiar refrain in slums across Phnom Penh. Education here has become a luxury item, reserved only for those who can afford it. And when the future is exchanged for bags of trash, we are left to ask, how far can society truly progress when young minds, meant to be nurtured with knowledge, are buried instead under heaps of refuse? As Phnom Penh stretches upward with new towers, there are still children here who cannot even spell their own names. That is perhaps the greatest tragedy of a city in transition. A city that risks losing its very future generation within its own shadows. Number 6, violence and insecurity. Can you believe that in the heart of bustling Phnom Penh, there are places where nightfall is not simply the absence of light, but a giant trap that swallows safety whole? In Bayong Trobe, when the sun disappears, Darkness rushes in, thick and suffocating, as if you could hear it creeping through every crack of wood and tin. There are no street lights, no police patrols, only narrow, damp alleys where each footstep echoes like a warning. In that darkness, silence does not bring peace. It carries tension, the heavy breath of fear. Houses patched from rusted metal and rotten planks stand pressed tightly together, walls so thin they cannot block out the cries from inside. A woman once whispered her story. Her husband often beat her, yet she never dared report it, because she knew no one would believe her, and worse, she could lose even the fragile shack she called home. Here, violence does not only unfold behind closed doors, it seeps into the air, clings to the walls, and becomes part of daily rhythm. Poverty corners people, turning frustration and helplessness into storms that explode inside families. Children grow up surrounded by smashing sounds, muffled sobs, and sometimes indifferent eyes, hardened from seeing too much. This is the cruel paradox. Poverty is not only measured by empty stomachs or lack of medicine, but also by the absence of safety, by the absence of a refuge when darkness itself becomes a predator. Imagine a slow-motion shot of a narrow alley, a candle flickering against a mother's anxious face, while screams erupt from the house next door, slicing into the night like invisible knives. That image is not just a picture. It is an echo that lingers in the mind, forcing us to ask, can a city truly call itself modern if fear reigns inside the hearts of its poorest citizens? Poverty is not only about hunger, it is about endless nights without sleep, tears that no one sees, and desperate cries swallowed by silence. And that is the darkest tragedy of all, when people lose the feeling of safety within their very own homes. Number 7. Erased rights. What could be more brutal than poverty? It is when your very existence is denied on the land where you have lived your entire life. In Bayong Trobe, hundreds of families lack legal papers, have no house numbers, and no names on any official registry. They live, yet they exist as shadows on the margins of society. With no land ownership, no legal protection, each passing day carries the fear that their fragile shelters might vanish overnight. A single streak of red paint brushed across a wooden door is enough to pronounce eviction. No formal notice, no compensation plan, just a mark that plunges a family into panic. I recall the image of a small riverside home where a young mother sat motionless, clutching her child, staring at the crimson stain spreading on her door. It looked like blood on skin, a mark signaling the end of fragile hope. This reveals a bitter paradox. They live inside the city, but are never recognized as citizens of it. Towers rise higher, land prices soar, and the weakest communities become the first targets of clearance projects. Poverty here is not only about a lack of money, it is the naked vulnerability of having no legal right to defend oneself. They are trapped between two worlds, one of flimsy tin and wood, and another of cold bureaucracy that erases their names. When we look at those red marks on doors, we are forced to ask, is a person without an address, without ownership, truly acknowledged as existing? And if their existence is denied, then who is accountable for the silent cries echoing through the night? Together, we have walked through narrow alleys, seen fragile shelters, heard the heavy echoes of history, and witnessed women carrying entire families on their weary shoulders. Yet beyond the hardship lies something extraordinary, the resilience of human spirit. These are people forgotten by society, yet they rebuild their lives from scraps. They smile through tears, raise children in the mud, and plant hope where it seems impossible. This is not only the story of Phnom Penh, it is a mirror reflecting the realities of urban poverty across Southeast Asia and the world. As the sun sets, rusted tin roofs glow crimson under the last light, while children still laugh, their eyes shining like little stars in the darkness. And so the question remains for us all. In a world marked by inequality and division, will we choose to look away? Or will we dare to see, to understand? Because it is in understanding that we realize slums are not only places of despair, but also of strength, resilience, and untamed dreams. If this journey has touched you, leave a comment, share your thoughts, give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe so you can continue to join fascinating discoveries as we uncover the truths hidden beneath the glittering surface of our world.